everyone! So I'm currently using 4 different Hobonichi weeks, and I wanted to show you how I'm using each one of them and why I have become a convert to the many week system. I'm using 2 of them as planners of different types, and then I'm using the other 2 for other purposes. So I'll first show you the planners and then talk about the other 2. As you can see, this is a Nuance Juicy Grapes Weeks, and when I bought this, I've talked about this in a previous video, people warned me, don't get this one because it doesn't lay flat, and it is true, it really does not lay flat. So this is something that I was aware of and I decided to take a risk on because I had in mind to use this planner for on the go. And so I thought I would just be able to take it out, make quick notes, and then put it back and not really work in it intensively. So I was hoping that it wouldn't bother me that it doesn't lay flat. And indeed, I have found it to be an exemplary planner in all respects, and I have no complaints, and I'm super, super happy with it. So let me just show you how I use it. I haven't really been using this section because when I'm on the go, I generally don't need to put anything in here that Then I use the monthlies to put in appointments that are going to happen on a particular day that I need to transfer into one of my home planners. So when I'm at home, I usually record all of my appointments in either my Hobonichi Cousin, which is my work planner, or in my Rhodia Undated Planner, which is my personal planner. And so I'll transfer these over to them. And that's all I'm using this for. So I like it because it's nice and uncluttered, and I can just take this out when I get home and copy over any appointments that I wrote down when I was out so that I don't lose them. Then the bulk of the planner is my weekly schedule. And so I use this to note down all of my appointments, and this does duplicate a lot of information that I have in my Cousin and in my Rhodia planner because those are where I write down my appointments when I'm at home. But because this is the only planner that I take out with me, I wanted to be able to have all of my appointments in it so that if I need to schedule something new when I'm out, I don't get stuck thinking, oh, that's in my Cousin at home, which happened to me earlier this year when I wasn't going out a lot because of COVID. And so on the few times when I did go out and end up having to schedule an appointment while I was out, I would be confused and trying to remember what I had planned for which dates. And as all planner people know, it's never a good idea to try to make appointments based on your memory. So I decided that it was worth the bit of duplication just so that I would feel confident when I was out that I had everything that I needed here in order to be able to make informed appointments. And the reason that I decided to go with this system that involves a bit of duplication instead of taking my Cousin out with me is just because the Cousin is so heavy, and I used to take it out on pretty much a daily basis. Whenever I went anywhere beyond like the corner shop, I would take it with me. But lockdown kind of made me rethink things, and I got so used to not having to carry a lot of stuff with me when I went outside that when I started going out a bit more again, I didn't want to carry, like, you know, the kitchen sink and everything else in my flat with me every time I went out. And so I started wondering whether or not I would be able to manage with something more portable. And this works really well because I can put it in a Hobonichi small drawer pouch along with my cards and my keys and everything else that I need to be able to function in society. And it's really light and doesn't take up much space. So I like that a lot better, and I think that the bit of duplication of appointments is worth it because I don't go out every day, and so on the days when I do go out, I just like not to have to take so much stuff with me. So that's probably the biggest change to my planner system compared with pre-COVID days, is the introduction of this on-the-go planner. So you can see here that I put in all of my appointments on the left, and then on the right I put in to-dos. So these are usually just to-dos for the week, and it doesn't really matter in what order I put them in because I see this whenever I'm out and I remember to check it, and then I transfer it over to my Cousin or my Rhodia as relevant when I get home. I use a Hobonichi pen with this, and mostly I write in black, but if there's something that I really feel like I need to remember, then I'll put it in red. And sometimes I put things in blue, and I haven't quite worked out a good system for blue yet, so I'm still trying to think about that because I haven't had that much experience using the Hobonichi pen in terms of color coding. So that is a work in progress. So I've just put in all of my forward planning up until the end of the academic term, which is the second to last week of March. And after that, I need to update some things because you can see that I didn't really fill it in beyond that. But at that point, I think I won't be going out as much, so I can just kind of update it a bit closer to the time. And then in terms of the notes page, just use them for things that don't fit in the weekly. So either things like lists of students, attendance lists, because I teach so often when I'm out, I'm at university and I can keep track of them like that. I recently started writing haikus, which I will tell you about a bit more in a minute, because that involves one of my other weeks. Just random notes. This was a chart that I made for a student to explain something about language typology. And this is a daily to-do list that I wrote while I was out because I just wanted to get a handle on everything that I would have to do when I got home. So I'm really just using this in quite a flexible way, and I think that it's working well. It's the end of January now, and I've used 17 pages of this, so hopefully it will last me the year, along with the weekly to-do pages. And I really like the fact that it's so indestructible. So I think that this is the big selling point of the Nuance Weeks. If you're kind of on the fence about it because of the concerns about it not lying flat, I think that the fact that it's so portable and so tough, and it just keeps its shape and it doesn't bend and it doesn't wrinkle, and it always looks beautiful no matter what you do to it. And this has been in my pocket for the last 8 weeks or so, really makes it worth the fact that it doesn't lay flat. Because if you're using this as an on-the-go planner, then laying flat isn't so important maybe. And I really enjoy the fact that I don't have to worry about it getting damaged at all. So that is my on-the-go planner, and that has been a big success, and I think that this is something that I would like to keep in my lineup. Now, the next week's in my lineup is this tiger bow and tie cover, which is absolutely beautiful, and I really love it. So the tigers are all in different positions, and some of them have a parrot either on their head or on their tail, which I really, really love. So this one is my bedside planner. So this is like the complete opposite of my on-the-go planner. I keep this in my bedside table, and I use this basically as a catch-all when I'm in bed and don't have my other planners with me. So usually I keep my work planner in my office, which is our spare bedroom, and I keep all of my other planners in the living room. So when I go to bed, I might end up in the terrifying situation of wanting to write something down and not having a planner to hand. And so I can just pull this out and not worry about what type of information it is. I can just put it in here and then transfer it into the relevant planner or tracker the next day. The monthlies I use for tracking exercise and painkillers. So I have fibromyalgia, and so I have to take pain medication sometimes. And so normally I'll put that in my tracker, but like I said, when I've gone to bed, I don't have the tracker with me, and so I can just put it in here and then transfer that into the tracker the next day. Then the weekly I just use to write down other information that has to go into one of my other planners or trackers. So anything that comes to mind that I think, oh my goodness, I forgot to note that down, I just put it in here, and then often I put a big exclamation mark to tell me that I need to transfer that over. And then I'll leave this out on the floor so that I see it the next morning and I take it into the relevant room to transfer the information over. So usually on this side it's important to-dos, and then on this side it's stuff that's a bit longer or more like thoughts, or here this was a haiku that I wrote, so I didn't want to take up space in what I think of as the daily pages. I think of this more as valid for the whole week, and so I put that kind of stuff there. And then in the notes pages, and I just use the notes pages very flexibly, so whenever I think of anything that's a bit longer and will take up more space that I want to write down somewhere, I put it in here. For a while I was using it for dailies before I got my daily planner. It's an A5 5-year techo from Hobonichi. Sometimes I note down haiku drafts if I think of one when I am in bed and don't have my other planners with me. So this can just be anything. And I had a bedside weeks last year, and it was a big success, and I filled up the whole thing, and it worked really well, and so that's how I knew that I wanted to continue on with it this year. So that is my bedside weeks. And this is a good one for the bow and tie design because it's a bit more delicate, and so I don't take it out of the house, and usually it just stays in the bedroom, except if I have to take it into another room to copy over some information, and then I put it straight back in my bedside table so that it's always there when I need it. Now, moving on from the planners, we go over to my adorable Panda Weeks, which is a Chinese language edition. And I got this from an Etsy shop, and I was super excited to discover that there's a Chinese edition weeks with pandas on it because I love pandas. And this is my tracker. I use this to track absolutely everything in my entire life. Anything that can be tracked, I put in here. So I use this to mark when I've changed the ink in my fountain pen so that I have an idea of how long before it runs out. And I generally do that in all of my planners that I use fountain pens for, so you can see that across all of my different books. And here I track when I've taken, the monthly spread is kind of the core of my reference tracking system. So I track exercise here in these little boxes. So it's usually cycling, and then sometimes it's walking or something else. And then at the end of the week, I add up the number of minutes that I've done. And here I track anything that happens in the house or to do with one of the pets, or anything really that I will need to look back on later and that it's easiest to be able to see in a monthly view. So for example, one of our dogs needs to be weighed regularly, and so I put that in here because then I can easily see when she was last weighed. I put in when the dogs have had their flea medicine and their worm medicine, when I've changed the sheets, when we've done anything else that seems like it would be useful for me to remember, like when we change the water filters, for example. So all of that goes in here. So it doesn't necessarily have to be related to a particular topic. It's all kinds of things together, but it's basically just anything that it's useful to be able to locate quickly in a monthly view. Then for the weeklies, I use these to track health. So how I'm feeling, if I've had a lot of pain that day, if I've been particularly fatigued, couldn't sleep, like all of those kinds of things. And for that, I feel like the weeklies are good because the information is more spread out and I don't need to reference it as much. The referencing goes on in the monthlies and in the yearly spread. So it's fine if there's a lot of information on here and it looks a bit messy afterwards, because I can use this to sort of track general patterns, but I don't need to look at it as much just to see like, oh, which day did I do X? So like I put down here when I got my booster jab and then I felt sick for the next few days, so I just wrote that down so that I'd have a record of it, but it doesn't really matter so much like months later to be able to look back on that. And so that's what I use the weeklies for. And then I use the notes pages to track things that I've bought. So I don't use it as a complete expenses tracker because I just don't keep track of all of my expenses. Maybe I should, but I really only use it to keep track of things that I've ordered that are like non-essentials. So I don't note down, you know, like supermarket shopping and bills and anything like that, because those are things that just kind of happen and they're sort of predictable more or less. But I note down when I've ordered planner stuff, and like I bought new glasses, and I try to keep track of whether or not they're needed or not. So like the new glasses I needed, but then I ordered some planner supplies which I didn't need, but then I try to monitor how successful they are. So basically I'm trying to kind of make sure that I don't like buy things on impulse and then regret it. I try to like think about it and put things down on a wish list beforehand. The wish list is at the end of this planner, so I try to think about things for a bit before I buy them, and then when I buy them, I try to write down a justification, like whether it was needed, whether it was not needed, how long I thought about it, so that I can try to make sure that I know what I'm doing in terms of buying stuff that's not essential. And then I have about 20 pages left at the end, and so I decided to use those pages just for like random things that I encounter that I think would be useful to be able to find again. So I guess kind of like a commonplace book, but I haven't used it a lot so far. But I read this newspaper article about things to do in 2022 that will make your life just a little bit better and are not hard to do. And so I wrote some of those down. And then I have started a list of completed K-dramas because that is like my thing apart from planning is watching K-dramas, and so I thought I'll start a tracker for that. And then there's this really cool feature and then in the My 100 I use that to start a list of K-dramas that I want to watch, but they're all on Netflix, so I ended up just figuring out how to use the My List feature on Netflix, which I had never really understood before in all the years that I had Netflix. And so now this is kind of redundant because I just have a whole bunch of stuff on my list, and that's how I find the next thing to watch. And then I have my wish list here. So this is where I try to monitor things that I think I'd like to buy before I buy them. And that's it. So I find this to be hugely helpful, and I really like having one tracker where I just put everything in my entire life, no matter what it is, because I know if it's planning, it will go in one of my various planners, and if it's tracking, anything that I want to be able to reference afterwards or to look up, then it goes in here. And now we're on to my final weeks, and this one is kind of exciting and something new that I'm trying out. So this is the Doraemon weeks, which came out in spring 2021. And when I bought this, I was planning to use it as kind of like the equivalent of my bedroom weeks, but to keep in the living room, because at that point I was working in my office a lot, and so I didn't have like a go-to planner in the living room. And so I thought, well, I'll just have this in here, and then if anything comes to my mind to write down when I'm in the living room, then I'll put it in here and then transfer it over when I need to. And I tried that for a bit, and then it just ended up not really working out. So you can see early on I was using it just as a kind of to-do list and for things to note down to put in my other planners. But after a couple of weeks, I just stopped using it. And then I tried using it for various other things. I started using it as an expenses tracker, and I used it like that for a few weeks, and then it was blank again for a while. Then I started using it as a health tracker in around October. Then a few weeks after that, I experimented with starting to use it as a morning journal, where I would just write a few lines in the morning when I got up. And my idea was that that would stop me from doom scrolling the news and checking emails, which wake me up but always also make me stressed. So I thought this would be a nicer way to start the day. And it did kind of work for that, but I just didn't feel satisfied with it. I think because it was kind of messy with all this other stuff that I'd done with it, and so that didn't stick. And then I started using it as a health tracker again, and a morning journal again. And then I stopped using it when I got my 2022 weeks and switched over to them. And so this was really kind of like a jack of all trades that never really found its groove. But then a couple of weeks ago, I started writing haikus, and I decided to do a 1 haiku a day challenge. And I've really been enjoying this because it's like a different way of journaling, and it's not something that I ever thought I would do. So this took me by complete surprise, and I did the first one, and I had so much fun that I thought I'd like to continue doing this and see how it goes. So what I do is every day I just pick a topic, either something nice that has happened during the day or that I've been thinking about that day, or is kind of like a theme for the day that I want to focus on, or just something that comes to mind that I feel like I'd like to write about. And so I will use the note pages to kind of draft it and like just experiment and make as much of a mess as I want to, trying to get it right. And then I will transfer it over to here and put in its finished form. So I've been doing this for a bit more than 2 weeks now, and I really enjoy it. And I think that I would like to keep doing this for the rest of this planner's life, which will be until the end of March. And then if all goes well, get a new spring weeks and carry on like that, because I think this side of the daily pages combined with the notes pages are enough to contain all of the scribbles and experimental drafts, and then on the left side I can write in the finished version. So what I really want to do, my grand plan after this, is to transfer all of the finished ones into a 5-year paper blanks journal, which I'm going to do another video on because that's something new that they've come out with that I am absolutely in love with. And we'll see how long I can keep up the haiku writing, but for now I feel like it's something that I could really incorporate into my daily schedule, and it makes me so happy because it's very short and contained, and you have a bit of a structure to work with because it's 5 syllables, then 7 syllables, then 5 syllables, and they're supposed to have a seasonal reference, but I don't usually do that. So apparently without the seasonal reference, they're called senryus. So I guess what I'm technically writing is senryus, but I call them haikus. The only problem with this is that because it has a daily slot, if I write more than 1 haiku a day, then I end up kind of running into the future. And if I miss a day, then, you know, that will be blank. But this is just something I'm doing for fun. So I don't think it really matters if the dates are exactly right. If you told me a couple of years ago that I would end up with 4 different weeks, I would have laughed because I had this very long-standing principle that I didn't want to have more than 1 weeks, and I just wanted to use that 1 weeks and not end up with like multiple of the same type of planners. But actually, now I've found out that I can use multiple weeks for different things, and it's really liberating because each one has a completely different purpose, and I feel like each one fits in well with my system. And that means that if there's more than 1 cover that I like, I don't have to spend so much time deciding on which one and ending up in agony regretting the ones that I didn't get. So I'm really, really happy with my multiple week system, and I feel like each of them has its own personality and each of them has its own place in my planning and journaling and tracking system, and I am very happy with that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!